Good day, fashion friends. In today's tutorial, I am going to take this plain denim shirt and some scraps from a gorgeous velour jacket that I took apart and transform this piece into a comfy, cozy fall shacket. Stay tuned. Okay, first things first, full disclosure. This was an item that was one of my first upcycles when I started upcycling. I took a cool like graffiti printed t-shirt and I cut some fringe and I put a panel on the front, and I actually liked it and I thought that it would be something that would sell. And probably about 2 years later, it still hasn't sold. And in that 2 years, I have grown and changed and learned new things. So therefore, I took it apart. I unstitched it, tore it out, seam ripped it, whatever you want to call it, and took it back down to a plain shirt. And now I am going to use, I have the sleeves and some other scraps from this jacket that I tore apart to do the patchwork duster. So I have 2 sleeves that I saved because I was like, I can use this for something. And I have like 4 little scrap pieces. I have the waistband, not sure if I'm going to use that. And for some reason, I can only find 1 pocket. So I'm a little disappointed in that. I looked everywhere, cannot find it. I also saved the collar in case I want to use that. And then if you remember from the patchwork video, I have this beautiful 3-dimensional rose mesh material that I have been cutting just around the roses and then stitching it on, and it gives it some dimension and texture. All right, let's get started and see how we're gonna do this. So the first thing that I want to do is check the sleeves, because from garment to garment, things can vary. Find the sleeve that matches this one. And I want to keep the length. And these openings are a little bigger than what's on a shirt, of course, because it's a jacket. Now, as you can see, the top part, because of the cut, is a little further than the sleeve of the shirt, and then the bottom portion is a little bit shorter. Now, to make this as easy as possible, I want to keep the sleeves because they're nice and snug around the wrist. I'm just going to cut out a section, so I don't want to go past here. And draw where I'm going to cut. So I'm just going to come here, and I may cut this, I think I'm going to cut this at a diagonal just to give it some, instead of being straight. So I'm going to cut this at a diagonal. I'm also going to mark where I need to cut so I can feel the edge right about there, allow for some seam allowance. I'm going to go here and then about 1/4 of an inch longer, because what's the motto? Longer is better. So that is where I'm going to cut the jacket sleeve. And that is past the opening as well, so that's good. I don't want to go clear up to the seam. So it's going to be slightly slanted, but ever so slightly. All right, so I want to cut on the very edge here, and we'll make a mark. I'm going to make a little mark right here, the top of the sleeve and the bottom of the sleeve. Give myself 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, better to be too much than not enough. And I'm going to draw my line. So that is where I'm going to cut off my sleeve. Same thing here. I will cut this one from the front, and I will cut this side from the back, because that's where my lines are, and I want to make sure everything lines up nicely. And the same thing with this sleeve. So I'm only using from here to here. So we're gonna have denim and then the velour and then denim, and then these are gonna be nice and snug around the wrist. Okay. Once it's done, right? All right. I will lay out my sleeve, making sure my seams are flat, everything is even. Actually, let me do this. Haha. Yeah, that gives me seam allowance. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Now, before I stitch this back together, so this is what it's going to look like, I cut out some of these three-dimensional purple rosettes that I have. I'm going to do the embellishments on this portion of the sleeve before I stitch this on, because I don't want to have to deal with that. This will fit so much nicer on my machine. Okay, I have the flowers stitched on. I did one in the center and then one on each side, and that was plenty. I did press my seams a little bit. Okay, I have my flowers sewn on. I turned this inside out and I laid this out, and what I noticed is that my denim sleeve that I want to stitch back on is a little wider than the sleeve piece that I'm adding. So I am going to have to take this in a little bit. Okay, this is the back, this is the back. Line up the top portion and leave a little bit of wiggle room. You don't want it super, super tight. And I see how much I need to take this sleeve in. I'm going to draw a line to kind of straighten that out a little bit. And then I'm going to do a quick little stitch to make this smaller. Okay, I made this a little smaller, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this over and insert it into this sleeve because I want to sew on the inside. The reason for that is I don't want a distressed look with this, and this velour likes to fray. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to match up my new seam. As I go around, this all should fit together. But for those of you that are familiar with my channel, that doesn't always happen now, does it? Okay, now because when I cut it, I have that little lip right there, so we're just going to keep it straight. But I found that this actually does fit. So I'm going to keep pinning, and as I said, I'm going to keep that lip right there, and we're just going to sew this on straight. Because when you cut something, when it's folded, it will not always cut perfectly straight. And now we're on the back seam. All right, now, just to check myself, I'm going to turn this inside out and have a look. Oh, yep, look, yep, I made a mistake, didn't I? How did I do that? Good thing I didn't sew that. Like I said, as you know, I am prone to mistakes. Oh, that's why, because I have a wrong side and a right side together. All right.
Never mind.
I want right sides together. All right, I have this sleeve inside out, this sleeve right side out, because I'm going to slide this into here. And then, as I said, you have your stitch seam on the bottom, stitch seam on the bottom. So we are going to slide this in together so that we have right sides together. When I stitch this on, I am going to do an overlock stitch to prevent everything from fraying. And then when I turn this right side out, I will, I think I'm gonna press it. I may have to press it, I'm not sure. Overlock stitch may take care of that. Now when you get to the sleeve, you wanna make sure that you curve this because it's gonna seem like you have a little bit of extra. So you're gonna wanna curve this a little bit. I'm going to turn this right side out to double check and make sure that I did this correctly. And looks like I did. Imagine that. So now I'm going to turn this back the way it was, take this over to my machine and stitch the bottom part of the sleeve. So the cuff, that's what it is, the cuff, because words escape me sometimes. Okay, to the machine. All right, I got the sleeve stitched on, and actually what I did, instead of doing an overlock stitch, I did a straight stitch all the way around, and then I went around the second time and did a zigzag stitch to prevent the fraying. Then I took it off my machine, I ironed everything toward the top, as you can see here. And then I put it back on the machine, and then I did kind of an inside out top stitch because my bobbin thread is black to match this because I did purple in the bottom and I don't like that. So I switched my bobbin when I did the rest of the flowers to black so you can't see. So then I still had it inside out so that I could follow and do top stitching all the way around. So now I will turn the shirt sleeve inside out. So when I lined up the seams and got to the top, I had an excess of denim. So I unpinned it. This time I started at the top and pinned partway down until I got to the underarm portion. And now I know where my seam needs to match up. So I'm going to lay this flat now that everything is pinned into place. And I'm going to draw a chalk line right along the edge to know where I need to take in that little section like I did on the sleeve so that the bottom seams will meet. So it's literally just a little zoop right there, and I will zip that up first, finish pinning, and then stitch on the rest of the sleeve. Okay, sleeve is sewed on. Like I said, I did a straight stitch and then I did a zigzag stitch. Now I'm going to press the seam all in one direction toward this fabric, and then I'm going to go back through and do a top stitch to hold that down, and it will just make it look nicer on the top, like I did with the bottom of the sleeve. Okay, everything is pressed. Now I know a top stitch you're supposed to stitch on the top. However, I want to make sure that I am tacking down the denim. So as I said, the thread in my bobbin is black, so the black bottom thread will actually be my top thread, and it will blend in with the blazer material or the jacket material. I just want to make sure, so I'm going to top stitch while it's inside out. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. It makes sense to me, so I'm going to top stitch inside out all the way around to get this seam to lay down. Okay, so I just want to show the result of my upside down top stitching. So this lays so much nicer, and I didn't have to turn it right side out to do it, and I didn't miss any of the denim, and I was able to keep everything straight. So on to the next sleeve. The second sleeve, of course, is going to be the same process. I am going to use this piece of material that I cut out as my guideline as to what I need to cut out. I also need to make sure that on the cuff that I take in that little bit, so I will compare from one side to the other and take the bottom of the cuff in. Also under the arm, I will use that as a guideline, even though I trimmed it off a little bit with some pinking shears. I will use that as a guideline to take it in under the underarm as well, and use the same pattern on the other sleeve to see how much I need to cut. I will also do measurements just to make sure that I'm cutting everything the same length, and again, starting at the cuff of the sleeve to the bottom of the cutout. Much easier. Adding the rosettes on the other sleeve as well. I'm not going to worry about those being even. They're just going to be where they're going to be, because I like a little randomness. I like things nice and neat and clean, but I also like a little bit of randomness. So the other sleeve rosettes are probably not going to be in the same spot. I might move them a little bit if they're off from the other sleeve. It doesn't matter. It's just for texture and dimension and some aesthetic. So again, same process on the second sleeve as the first sleeve. Just double check your measurements so that way where you're cutting is not going to be off-centered. It's going to be symmetrical. So in this case, we do need some symmetry. Okay, just to show you how I use this as a pattern for anybody that is new to sewing. The part that I cut off, I lined it up on the printed fabric. After I lined my sleeve up and then I put this on top of the printed fabric, I made my lines, cut that. Then I take this part that I cut out as well, put it on my denim fabric sleeve, measured from here to here, and here to here doesn't really matter because we're going to take this in. Just get it close, and you're going to measure from here to here, line it up here to here on the other side. Make sure that like your bottom seams, your top seams, everything is all lined up nicely. And I also pressed this, the sleeve, to make sure that everything is going to lay flat. Then I took my yardstick or any kind of a straight edge that you want to use, and I made a chalk line from top to bottom. That's where I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to do another chalk line here to here, and then that is going to be the same section that I cut out for the other sleeve. So everything should be symmetrical. Okay, both sleeves done. I love the look. I love the three-dimensional rosettes. I love that I top stitched. It just makes everything lay so much nicer and has just a nice polished finished look to it. Okay, now we are going to continue and maybe do the collar, maybe do the strip in the front, work on some pockets, maybe a little something on the back. Not sure yet. So let's see what else we can do with this piece. Okay, so as I said, I can only find one pocket section. I do not know where the other one is, and believe me, I have looked. One of the first things I notice is, you know, I have this pocket piece, and it seems like it's going to fit very nicely along this side right here. So I'm kind of digging that, and that will definitely bust that scrap. I'm not gonna go under the arm. I think I will cut it off like right about here and straighten this up and stitch this on. But I think first, before I do that, I'm going to do one of those purple rosettes right there before I stitch it on. Okay, I have added a few little touches here and there. So since I have a pocket on this side and I had none on that, and luckily I found that side of the pocket and it fit. So I just did like a little corner, and I cut all the items except this one, I'll tell you why, with pinking shears. This I could not trim. This is seamage, so I'm just going to zigzag stitch this and this, and this. This I will straight stitch around. This was like a flower that I had taken off of it, and I ironed stabilizer behind it so that I could trim it and then just do straight stitch around it, and it shouldn't fray. And then I just, to even out the look, because we have up there, I just cut a square patch and put it down here on this side. So I'm going to stitch these items on, and then we'll figure out what we're gonna do on the back. Okay, I now have my embellishments attached. I zigzag stitched this. I did a straight stitch all the way around, and yes, it was tedious, but the look is so worth it. This piece I ended up gluing on. I did use hot glue. I don't think it'll be a problem because both materials are very, very porous, and I just made sure to like really push that down because I wanted to leave the pocket open, and it was going to be way too hard to try to stitch that without closing the pocket. And then we have our square here to give some balance from the top portion to the bottom portion. Now we're going to see what we can do for the back with what we have left. Okay, for the back, I had like 4 pieces left. I literally just put them haphazardly. The only thing that is kind of sort of messing me up is there is a pleat on the back here. So I may put something in the center. And I think I'm also going to, you know, put some of the purple rosettes as well. Most of what is left is like this waistband thing, which I don't see that I could use. I tried playing around with the collar for a little bit. I couldn't get anything to kind of mesh. And then the only other thing I have left is like the cuffs and a couple other little scraps. So I've pretty much busted the scraps from this, and at this point I am just going to stitch around all of this. Now because these were so big and it's such an awkward thing, a little trick that I learned is to use Gorilla Glue because I do not have Wonder Under. I don't have any double-sided fusible interfacing or anything like that. It is on order, however. So I just kind of glued these down to keep them from shifting, and I'm literally just going to go around and zigzag stitch all of this on, and then if there's anything else that I want to add, I'll see what I want to add after that. Okay, there is the back complete, and now for the final touch, what I'm going to do, I have these little tiny pearls, and I'm just going to put like 3 little pearls with hot glue in each one of the flowers on the front and the back. Okay, it's all done. Are you ready for the reveal? Here we go. Okay, and here it is on, so you can wear it as a little jacket. This is very soft, very cozy, or you can button it up and wear it as an actual shirt. You can throw on a belt. And then there is the back. Okay, there we go. That brings another tutorial to a close. Thank you so much for watching. Always, I appreciate every single view. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on all social media platforms under the same name, Run It Back Rack. That includes Instagram, TikTok, and as well as right here on YouTube. You can also find me on DePop under the same name as well, where you will find listings of my upcycled items that are available for sale. As always, love, peace, and thrift, and we'll catch you on the flip side.